Hello, hello. This is Josh with the Synchronized Universe podcast, coming at you live again from a drive home because that's what I like doing. Anyway, don't be a hater. Don't judge me. I know if you're listening, you're probably not hating, but it's all good. Anyway, hope everybody is doing all right in the world. Things have been a little crazy at work, at home. Just going through the motions, riding the wave, if you will. Sometimes I have ups, sometimes I have downs, and it's the nature of reality. And it honestly happens to everybody. Anyway, on the last one I was talking a little bit about the Anunnaki and my weekly radio show I've been doing with my buddy. And there's a subject that I find really fascinating. I'm actually about to be done with the Slave Species to the Gods book by Michael Tellinger. If you've never read about the Anunnaki, that's a really, really good book to read because he covers a lot of the stories that help you, fully take in the wealth of information that's in the Sumerian tablets. It starts with essentially the history of genetics, and it kind of helps you paint a picture as you read the thing, how this could have been possible, because in our minds, we believe we are the pinnacle of civilization because, of course, that's kind of what history tells us, that we look back 5,000 years ago and, we're primitive, people that didn't know crap. And somehow we're able to build these crazy monuments like the pyramids that we cannot replicate today. And we're just supposed to believe that all these folks way back when are completely primitive. And that's because historians have painted the picture for us. And, with very little, supporting evidence, and they don't want to come out right out and say it, hey, yeah, we really don't know who built the pyramids. They think the Great Pyramid was built by King Khufu, or the Pharaoh Khufu. But there's really no solid evidence to support that. These crazy, gigantic monuments were built as tombs for a pharaoh. And this is the kind of stuff that we have to accept because, that's what they tell us. To question that is, you're just a conspiracy theorist. When in reality, you're going off information that you don't know is factually true and presenting it in history books as facts. That's the world we live in. There's so much of that goes around. I'll take the Bible as another example. So I did an episode a few episodes back. I talked about the idea of us living in a closed system, the idea of the earth being flat. And, a lot of times I cruise through the social media and I like to read a lot of the posts on the flat earth stuff because, for one, it makes me laugh a little bit. Not necessarily makes me laugh. I like to view that side. I like to view where, their supporting evidence is to support the theory that the earth is flat. Just because, if I'm going to keep an open mind on everything. So when you cruise through those message boards, a lot of the people that post or support that idea is it comes from the Bible. They're getting the fact that the earth is flat from the Bible. And a lot of the arguments is you just believe everything you've been told because scientists have told you that the earth is round, and you believe everything you've been told your whole life without question. And then at the same time, they are getting their source of information is the Bible, and they've been told that what the Bible says is correct their entire lives without question. It is the exact same thing. That's a hypocrisy. It's the exact same argument. They're going off information secondhand, from the Bible because they've been taught their whole lives that this is it. This is the Word of God. And honestly, most people have never researched the history of the Bible, where it comes from, who compiled it, all the apothecary books that were taken out of it. And honestly, that's a problem that I have with that idea. Sorry, my GPS is telling me there's a car on the road. But anyway, so yeah, I've been, commentating, and I talked to this guy about it. He started messaging me because I explained to him that his logic is flawed because, again, your argument is that, you're just going off something you've been told your whole life, when that's exactly the same thing that you're doing. And, we went back and forth, and he honestly realized, oh, yeah, I guess that does make sense. And the idea is that people are so scared to question that book, that specific book, because, you've essentially been told that you're going to go to hell if you do that. If you question it, you're going to go to hell. So that fear has literally stayed around since this information was disseminated a long, long time ago. The exact time and date is unknown. It was, again, Emperor Constantine that approved the final version or whatever way back when at the Council of Nicaea. And there was a lot of books that were taken out because they didn't fit a specific narrative. I tell you, take a minute, lose the fear, take a minute and research where the Bible comes from. And you'll start to see that there's a lot that was taken out. And once you read these chapters and stuff that were taken out, everything starts to make a little bit more sense. But it also makes you realize that the Bible is actually, again, it's a condensed version of older Sumerian texts. And the Sumerian texts have all of it. They have the entire story. And lots of people have spent tons of time deciphering these, and that's one of the things that the Slave Species to the Gods book is about. And, it's a compilation of a lot of different works. So you can essentially read it and get a lot of what you could read from reading like a bunch of Zechariah Sitchin's books, which I also recommend reading because it's honestly fascinating. The idea in Zechariah Sitchin's books is that, we look at history as mythology. We look at, these people and their deities that that they claim to live alongside them, and not only live alongside, but fight alongside them in wars were mythological. When in reality, their history that they write, they're writing it as though they were literally living alongside these beings, these advanced beings, God, quote unquote, right? And that's like the Roman gods, the Greek gods. Like, according to them, they lived alongside these folks. These were not myths. And that's the thing that you got to get your head wrapped around, is that, the ultimate truth in all of this is that maybe there's been a grand manipulation of mankind. And that's one of the things, me and my buddy have been talking about every week on our podcast. It's essentially the idea behind the Slave Species to the Gods book is that we were created as a slave species. We were created by an advanced group from a different planet. And yes, I'm aware that it sounds crazy, 100%. Is it any less crazy that an infinite, omnipotent God created man, created the earth and, the universe in 7 days, and essentially has been like a kid with a magnifying glass destroying cities and stuff because they disobey him? Once you really start to analyze the Old Testament and stuff, look at it from the perspective of a master to a slave, and it starts to make a whole lot more sense. There's a lot of proof, to support the idea that these were not God by any means. And, that's another thing I've been mentioning in a lot of my stuff, and I want to reiterate right now so everybody knows. There's a reason why you can get that God connection in almost any religion or faith that you choose, even if you don't choose any. Even if you just go into meditation, you can still get this connection with God. And there's a reason. Because God is above all of that. He's above religion. I use he loosely because God is probably neither he or she. But anyway, God is the source of the universe itself. And even, in the Sumerian tablets, the Anunnaki talk about it. They talk about the creator of all. That's what they call God. So they essentially became our gods because they created us they were master geneticists. Just like we're able to clone animals now, lots of our fast food is probably cloned meat. So it's really not that far-fetched that, an advanced group of beings was able to come to this planet so very long ago and, essentially, cultivate this planet, and end up creating a subservient slave worker to do their bidding. It'd probably be much like we did if we were going to Mars. Would it be easier to bring in, people to do the work, or would it be easier just to create the people from there? Right? That's the idea. Yeah, this stuff is incredibly interesting to ponder, and it's definitely something that really, really fascinates me, and I love to talk about it, because honestly, man, if you could take an objective look at our history and think that, yeah, they're telling us everything, then you just have not done your homework. Most people have never looked into history besides what we're taught in our history classes. And there's a lot, we're finding out how much of Black history was left out of history books. There's a ton of it that was left out. Like, mainly the bad stuff, right? Because we want to look away from the bad stuff that happens to the Black folks in the Black community and pretend it never existed, and just kind of, oh yeah, there was never any racism, and that's not true. Like, if anything, I mean, Black folks have kind of had it the worst, especially in our country. Like, I mean, segregation laws, that didn't end, 60, 70 years ago now? Like, that's not that long ago. So, of course, this stuff is still rooted in our society. And honestly, like, racism goes, you can trace it all the way back to, like, the dawn of civilization, like, where one group was picked over another. You ever thought about that as well? That's another thing that's puzzling about the Bible. It's like, why would God, an omnipotent, all-loving God, choose one group over another, and, like, demand blind obedience, bowing down before he's going to wipe out the entire cities? That is not correct. I'm going to drill this into people's heads as long as I can. That was to create a sense of fear so that we could be controlled. Because, they were losing control of mankind, the people that were really running the show. And that fear has literally stuck around till today. Like, the only thing that you need from the Bible at all is Jesus' message about essentially loving your friends and family, or loving your enemy as you love yourself, treating others the way you would want to be treated, and essentially, like, all the positive stuff that he was teaching, which he learned when he was learning from the Eastern cultures. Like, all the other stuff is absolutely unnecessary, and it's 100%, and I'll die on this hill right now. It's 100% a condensed version of Sumerian text. And to support this, I've read the Book of Enoch. I've read the other version of Jesus is the other version of the Book of Matthew. It's like the J. Emmanuel, J.I., J.D., something like that. Anyway, I've read that one. I've, again, read many other religious texts like the Bhagavad Gita. And trust me, and I've clearly read all of Zechariah Sitchin's books on the Sumerian tablets and the Anunnaki. And believe me, I'm telling you, like, without a doubt, the Bible is a condensed version of these older texts. The names essentially get changed, but the stories are consistent. Like the Great Flood. Me and my buddy did an episode on the Great Flood as another example. There is hundreds of flood stories from all over the world, they're talking about the Great Flood. And it's fascinating because these go across continents that they should have no contact with each other. So there's definitely a lot of evidence supporting the idea that there was actually a flood, or the deluge, as they call it. That's another thing I touch on. By all means, if you want to, go to Blog Talk Radio. Me and my friend do this every single week. I'm not sure what the title of our show is going to be this week, but it's probably going to be on whether or not we are still a slave species, which honestly, I would say that we are a slave species, because in reality, if you really look at it, people will laugh at that. Like, I'm really free, but are you? Are you really free? When you really think about it, there is not you can't live in your house for free. You can't get water for free. You can't, you have to do everything. Like, you have to work to exist. And yes, some people get lucky and they're able to, build up money and escape the slave trade, as I would call it. But your wages, think about this, your wages are completely taxed. It's like you're taxed at such a ridiculous rate. Why are they entitled to anything that you make? When you get a bonus from work, they get 40% of it. Like, why do we allow this? Like, why is that? Why, if you get a bonus for your hard work, does the government get to come in and take 40% of it so that we can make rich politicians? No. This system is absolutely set up as it's organized slavery. And it's another hill that I will 100% die on. We live in an organized slavery system. That's what capitalism really is. Like, ultimately, this system is built on the back of the lowest paid worker. And it's a system that's been set up from the dawn of time. 100%. Now, is there a better system? Who knows? I'm not going to sit here and say that communism is better or socialism is better. But in all honesty, at its core, socialism would be a good idea. Everybody sharing everything, that would be amazing. However, there is no system that's going to be perfect, because the fact is, not everybody is going to do their fair share. That's the idea everybody always harps on about, not capitalism, but communism and socialism, is I don't want to have to pick up the slack for this guy. And honestly, that's a fair argument. And then the idea of capitalism is there's such a great disparity of wealth, the wealthy versus the poor. And again, there is no perfect system, but we are consistently kept arguing and fighting amongst each other because from the beginning, there's been this divide and conquer agenda. And again, and this is something, you can read this straight from the Bible. The Bible, you read it like that. It's a divide and conquer agenda. God decided he was going to choose a certain group. They were his chosen people. And think about it. That's creating divide. Hey, we're special here. And none of that makes any sense when you really start to question it out loud. It doesn't. 100%. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it does anymore, just to not tiptoe on people's stuff or, tiptoe around it. I can talk to anybody about God. I can talk to anybody, anybody from any religion I can talk to about God just fine. It doesn't bother me. I don't care what anybody believes. But the idea, that your God is the only one and everybody else is going to hell because they don't believe in your God is stupid. It's mind-blowingly ignorant. It's human ignorance at its finest, and it's something that's been instilled in our minds from the beginning. And all the religious dogma that goes along with it is ridiculous. Think of how many wars have been fought. Think of how many people have died in the name of religion, in the name of God, because we feel we have the right to murder people because they don't believe. That's insane, man. That's insane that we accept that kind of stuff. And again, it's not something that I'm willing to stand by and be quiet about anymore. To this day, there is still wars, holy wars, being fought over dumb stuff, over something. Yeah, they said we can have this land. God said we can have this land. And we're still fighting and killing each other over pieces of land instead of just agreeing. Just get the hell along, man. Move on. We got to stop destroying each other. We'll never advance as a species unless we stop destroying each other. And to take that step, we have to understand that we're being manipulated 100%. You do not need religion to know God, because you are God walking around in human form. That's what everybody is. This entire universe is God experiencing itself. That is the ultimate truth. And this comes, that's a quote directly from the Law of One. And, advanced Freemasons will tell you the exact same thing. That there's only, this is a famous quote, there's only one of us here. That's the ultimate truth. We are literally projections of an infinite consciousness experiencing itself. And honestly, this world is an illusion. Yes, it's real to us 100%, but it's an illusion. All of this, everything is energy. You take a microscope and microscope yourself down to the atoms. Atom is nothing but energy. And that's what we are. We're energy just moving around, experiencing itself. Anyway, kind of drug on a little bit there. But honestly, man, this is something, again, a fascinating subject. Please jump over to the Blog Talk Radio. I'm going to continue doing weekly stuff on my own podcast as well. Talking a little bit more about the Anunnaki because it seems like people want to hear about it. But yeah, man, this is a subject I'm going to keep going at it because it's time. It's time for humanity to take the next step. And to take the next step, we have to understand where we came from. The true history, not this manipulated, dumbed down version of our history, the true history of our planet. And in order to find that, you got to do some digging. You have to be ready to face hard truths. You know, when I first started going down this path, it was hard for me to accept. I used to be a very religious person, very against anything. I was against anything that went against God. Like, oh no, I can't do anything outside what it says in the Bible. Like, anybody questions that, I was like, oh, that person's going to hell. And I became such a judgmental person. And, one of the basic tenets of the Bible is judge not lest ye be judged. And the reason is because we were all one person. Whatever you do or think or do it about doing to another person, you are also doing to yourself. That is why Jesus was saying what he was saying. 100%. Like, Jesus realized this ultimate truth while he was alive. And that's something to know. And another thing to know, and this is a real controversial subject, is maybe we don't know the whole truth about Jesus. And, this is something that I'm going to cover, and it's going to irritate a lot of people, but Jesus took a path that all of us can take if we wanted to. He laid out the path to escape this third dimensional matrix. What you can do to escape the reincarnation cycle, because Jesus used to teach reincarnation, it was taken out. 100%. If you look at the early adaptations of the biblical scriptures, Jesus used to teach reincarnation. It was a normal thing. No matter what you think, we reincarnate. Jesus is teaching you the answer to reincarnation. And in order to do that, you have to live a life of service to others and let go of all the things. Forgive. Forgiveness is the most powerful thing you can do. Harboring that stuff literally stays inside of you. Sorry, I kind of drove out a little bit more. I was going to get off here, but I don't know, it's important stuff. But yeah, that's the honest to God truth. And I've read a book series called The Law of One many, many times, and it talks about that's exactly what Jesus' message really is trying to tell you. He's teaching you the answer to escape the cycle. And of course, it's been misled, and the only way to heaven is through me. What he's talking about is the Christ energy. Has nothing to do with whether you accept Jesus as your Savior. 100% has nothing to do with that. He's talking about the Christ energy. And that's what it is you have to forgive yourself, forgive anybody who's wronged you, and you have to live a life in service to others. And that gets you out of the reincarnation cycle. That's the most important thing you can do is forgiveness. Forgiveness is the most powerful thing you can do in your life, especially for those of us who have tons and tons of trauma. You got to forgive. As hard as it is, forgiveness. 100%, write it out. Write out letters to yourself. Write out letters to your family. Let that stuff go. Stop carrying that weight with you, because when you die with all that weight and all that trapped trauma, you repeat the cycle because of your karma. You're going to keep repeating until you solve the problem. And that's, part of the reason why our lifespans were shortened is so we can remain trapped in this third dimensional reality. Because at one point in time, we lived a long, long time. It even says that in the Bible as well. In the Sumerian tablets, it gives a long, lengthy explanation about all that. But yeah, man, I'm going to get off here before I get home. Time anyway. But yes, again, this is something I'm definitely going to be talking about weekly on this podcast and weekly on my other podcast. I'm doing that one on Tuesday nights. I'm going to do this one on Wednesday nights from my house. I got my setup now. Probably still do some random ones on the drive home because it passes the time. I don't have to be irritated in traffic. But in any case, thank you for listening. I appreciate you all. I hope that, I can get you thinking and getting you to question the world around you. And again, I mean not to offend people, but the time is now to start questioning the world around you and accept that it doesn't matter if you believe in any religion, if you take part in any religion, God is still there. You are still God. Ultimately. Again, that's the ultimate truth. And yes, I know that people are going to get offended about that. Of course, that's fine. But that is the ultimate truth. Ultimately, you are part of God or are God, whatever you want to call it. You can call it many things if it offends you to call them that. But anyway, this is Josh with the Synchronized Universe podcast. I hope you all have a wonderful day and many blessings to you all.